DK, how you doing?
What's up, my man? How we doing? I
great.
cannot. I was already excited for football, and now that I'm going to get to actually be in a couple stadiums this year, get a feel for it, I cannot wait for this football season to roll around.
Yeah, man, me too. Game days, Saturday mornings, Saturday afternoons around campuses across the country is just when the juices are flowing. And that's what makes it kind of a shame that this offseason we've been just inundated by these controversies, Ohio State, Maryland, other really serious situations. Let's start with Ohio State. When it began, people, I think, assumed, well, Urban Meyer can't survive this. And now it feels like it's softening that he will. I don't know how to read this, but how do you read it?
I'm with you, DA. It feels to me like Urban Meyer is going to get most likely a 4-game suspension. That'd kind of be my hunch of what he's going to get, because they have to do something, because he admitted to lying at Big Ten Media Days. There was a problem on his staff when you have a guy like Zach Smith with the history of issues that he had. So they have to set some standard. They have to do something. The reason I think it'll be 4 games, it's either going to be 2 or 4 games. And here's why, and this is kind of the messed up part of it, is that I'm sure they're well aware of the schedule and the way it unfolds. So week 3, they play TCU at home. TCU is a really good team, out-of-conference schedule game from the Big 12. So it might be a 2-game for that. And if not, I think the harshest punishment you'll see is a 4-game suspension, because guess who they play in week 5? It's on the road against Penn State. So that's kind of my hunch. And, DA, I am 100% on board with you. When the news first came out, I was like, uh-oh, there's no way he's going to survive this. This is going to be a mess. But I really think Ohio State did the right thing by just slowing down, removing him from the situation, putting him on paid administrative leave, and kind of reviewing the facts and the evidence and talking to all the parties involved. And I'm sure I kind of trust them, which is kind of scary to think in college football that you would trust somebody. But I trust Ohio State to do the wise thing here because they've taken this slower approach.
Urban Meyer suggests that he did what he was supposed to do, which would be following protocol, reporting this about one of his assistant coaches, and then suggesting that he flew up the flagpole. And I'm guessing his background is going to be, hey, I told them this and they didn't want me to fire him, or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
But can we believe that Urban Meyer doesn't have end of discussion autonomy over his staff decisions?
Yes, for sure he does. And I'm sure there is some process that goes forth at Ohio State where he reports an incident and says, hey, I have a coach on my staff that's having some problems off the field, and whatever those problems are, they're all the thing that's crazy about college football is you see these message boards and chat rooms. They get scary. I mean, it's a deep, dark place of college football, and it brings out the absolute worst in college football fans. So you're reading a bunch of garbage on there, a lot of victim shaming. But when you look at it, I think Urban Meyer, that to me, DA, when he made that statement and apologized but then said I'd followed proper protocol, that was Urban Meyer saying, I'm not going down alone. I'm not going to be the fall guy for this. And it's not just going to be me, which I thought was a really smart thing on his behalf. But you are right. He has ultimate final say on his staff, so he does own up. He has to own up to some of it. But here's the problem, and this is not exclusive to college football. This happens in corporate culture. It happens in all walks of life where it happens in family life. You view your coaching staff as your family, and you're going to protect your family at all costs. And that can be to your detriment, and that can make you not see clearly. And I think that's what happened with Urban Meyer in this case, and has happened, in other circumstances too. I think he was too loyal to his staff, trying to protect one of his coaches. Now, the question that people have to judge is, does that loyalty, should that have him fired or not?
Danny Kanell joins us this morning here on the DA Show. At Maryland yesterday, the president comes out and says we have to hold moral responsibility for the passing of a student athlete. But DJ Durkin is still on staff. They fired the conditioning coach. Is there any way a guy, and I hate to bring win-loss record into this, but he's not an institution there. He's not a civic hero, and he's a sub-500 coach. Doesn't feel like there's a lot of reason to keep DJ Durkin around. What do you think?
So it's another one. I hate talking about these subjects, so I'm with you. It's like you have to come out, especially in our business, right? If you're in radio or you have a podcast like I do, you have to make these instant reactions, right? But in some of these circumstances, that can put you in a pretty precarious spot, and you have to make kind of judgments without knowing what's going on fully behind the scenes. And this is one of the worst tragedies that would happen to any coaching staff, to any team. To lose one of their teammates like this is just an ultimate tragedy that you hope no one ever has to endure. As far as who's responsible, like the medical and training staff does have to take a lot of responsibility for this. The fact that that Jordan McNair was on the field for 45 minutes and the ambulance wasn't called as he's there, lying on the field basically dying, that's inexcusable. And that's what Maryland was apologizing for yesterday. Now, that being said, like, that is a separate issue then. Is there a culture of verbal and physical abuse because of the way Maryland is training? That I don't know because I'm not there every day. Now, you read this ESPN report that comes out, and they interviewed some players that came there, and they told some of the stories, and some of them do cross the line, and I think that's why you had the strength and conditioning coach fired. But other ones, like, are we going to call it verbal abuse if players are getting yelled at and cursed at during practice while they're trying to train? I understand it, and I think that's hard for people to grasp if you didn't play the sport or if you didn't play at that level, because it sounds awful and it sounds horrific, but it's kind of necessary. And that's really hard for people to understand because coaches will do this. And I went through something similar at Florida State. We had these mat drills that they called them, and they were basically our version of a boot camp where, you wake up at 5:30 in the morning and you go through these drills, and you are physically exhausted and you're dying, and coaches are sitting there yelling at you, screaming at you, calling you all kind of names, but they're also trying to push you to your limits to show you that you can accomplish things that you never thought you were able to do. And a lot of times I was able to do things I didn't think I could do because I responded to those calls, and I responded to some of those, shouts and, those words that were spit at me. I was like, I'm not going to go down like this. I'm going to fight back. And this is a worst-case scenario where I don't know what their training regimen is like, but is it that much different than anywhere across college football? I'm going to say no. I think they all train like this. They're pushing guys to the wire, to the very maximum, and this just happens to be one of the worst-case situations that you would see unfold, and it's tragic, but maybe it's just an accident. Maybe it's just one of these things that can't be avoided. And a lot of people have a really hard time fathoming that could be the situation.
Danny Kanell joins us, CBS Sports HQ, CBS Sports Network, also his podcast Off the Bench. At LSU, in the last 24 hours, we've had 2 quarterbacks decide to transfer, and Ed Orgeron hasn't named a starter yet ahead of the opener against Miami. LSU's quarterback issue has been there for years. What do you make of LSU's chances this year, and what's going on at QB?
Well, you are 100% right. They have had a major issue at quarterback. I mean, but the thing is, they're still really good. Like, that's pretty crazy. Joe Burrow's transferring in from Ohio State. They played with, Danny Etling was a Purdue transfer, so they've been going to the Big Ten. I think it's going to be a rough year for LSU. I really do. I look at them the way their schedule unfolds. I think it's going to be tough. I think Ed Orgeron, the honeymoon period is over. When you look at Ed Orgeron, he was the perfect hire because he sounds like everybody in the area. He's passionate about LSU football. And I like Ed Orgeron, but you've seen turnover at the offensive coordinator with Matt Canada, who ironically, is now the interim head coach at Maryland. It's crazy how the college football works that way. But the offensive side of the football has been a complete disaster for LSU. And until they figure out, they're still going to find themselves just fighting an uphill battle because in today's college football, it used to be, and even Bama's, adapted to the current college football situation. It used to be if you had a dominant defense and an okay offense, you could win. You could win championships that way. But now you've got to adapt with the times. You've got to be able to put points on the board or else you're going to find yourself in a tough situation. So I'm sure it's because of the transfer situation. When you have guys come in, quarterbacks look around and they're saying, there's another body in here, and this is a former, 5-star recruit. I don't have much chance. They're going to take their ball and go somewhere else, which is kind of more of an indictment on all of college football than it is necessarily on LSU.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.